President Hoover versus President Roosevelt. In the 1932 election, President Hoover paid the price for being unable to solve the problems of the Depression. It was partly his own fault. Until 1932, he'd refused to accept that there was even a major problem. He insisted that, quote, prosperity is just around the corner. This was obviously ridiculous, and it left him open to criticism from those who found that their livelihood had been ruined. A famous banner carried in a demonstration in Iowa said, "In Hoover we trusted, and now we are busted." Hoover was regarded as a do-nothing president. This was not entirely fair on Hoover. He did try to restart the economy both in 1930 and 31 by tax cuts. He tried to persuade business leaders not to cut wages. He set up the Reconstruction Finance Company, which propped up banks to stop them going bankrupt. He also tried to protect US industries by introducing tariffs on overseas goods. To most observers, these measures looked like mere tinkering at the edges. Hoover and most Republicans were very reluctant to change their basic policies. They believed that the main cause of the Depression had been economic problems in Europe, not weaknesses in the US economy. They said that businesses should be left alone to bring back prosperity, laissez-faire economics. Even more damaging to Hoover's reputation, however, was how little he tried to help people who were suffering because of the Depression. He believed that Social Security was not the responsibility of the government. Relief should be provided by local government or by charities. The Republicans were afraid that if the government helped individuals, they would become less independent and less willing to work. Hoover's reputation was particularly damaged by an event in June of 1932. Thousands of servicemen who had fought in the First World War marched on Washington asking for their war bonuses, a bit like a pension, to be paid now. The marchers camped peacefully outside the White House and sang patriotic songs. These camps became known as Hooverville, and the soldiers were simply trying to peacefully demonstrate about their right to their money. Hoover appointed General Douglas MacArthur to handle the situation. MacArthur convinced himself that there were communist agitators within these groups. He ignored the instructions of the president to treat the marchers with respect. Instead, troops and police used tear gas and burned the marchers' camps down. Hoover would not admit he had failed to control MacArthur. He publicly thanked God that the USA still knew how to deal with a mob. It was probably not surprising then that in 1932 the Democratic candidate, Franklin Roosevelt, won the election. As a politician, his main characteristics were he wasn't radical, believed in active government to improve the lives of ordinary people. He had plans to spend public money on getting people back into work, and he was not afraid to ask for advice on important issues from experts. With such ill feeling towards Hoover being expressed throughout the country, Roosevelt was confident of victory, but he took no chances. He went on a grand train tour of America in the weeks before the election and attacked the attitude of Hoover and the Republicans again and again. Roosevelt's own plans were rather vague and general, but he did realise people wanted action, whatever that action might be. In the 20,800-kilometre campaign trip, he made 16 major speeches and another 60 from the back of his train. He promised the American people a, quote, New Deal. The election was a landslide victory for Roosevelt. He won by 7 million votes, and the Democratic Party won a majority of seats in the Congress. It was the worst defeat the Republicans had ever suffered.